Building on the campus of Dixie State University. This is Trailblazer Weekly, starring Carrick Segmiller and Drayson Ball.
It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Trailblazer Weekly is live from Studio A inside the Ginny's Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University. Trailblazer Weekly, Carrick Segmiller, Drayson Ball with you on this Wednesday afternoon. A show so good, we had to extend the show, Drayson, to 90 minutes instead of just an hour.
Yeah, I mean, we have been talking about this for a while. We just feel like we're just trying to cram a whole lot of information into 60 minutes, and it's just not been going the way that we wanted. So we just decided to extend the show another 30 minutes, give us a little extra time to chatter, because we obviously know that we like to hear ourselves talk. So that's one of the main reasons we wanted to do this. But yeah, permanently going forward, we're going to extend the show another 30 minutes. It will now be a 90-minute show every single Wednesday.
And honestly, we could probably fill 2 hours with all the great information that we have. We're going to try it at 90. And if we feel like we need to go to 2 hours, maybe we'll go to 2 hours. And by next year, maybe we'll be going bi-weekly or daily.
And because, of course, the extra 30 minutes, we felt like we had to be a little more casual, so we decided to wear some T-shirts today just to, we can't be in polos for more than an hour at a time. So we just wanted to keep it casual today.
I really enjoy having the show on Wednesday, but now you just said the T-shirt thing, and I wish it was either Tuesday or Thursday. So it could be T-shirt Tuesday or T-shirt Thursday. Big shout out to Aaron Meadows and his crew over at the Dixie State campus store for hooking us up with these great Trailblazer shirts. They're on the racks over there right now, so you can go by and check them out. And if you want to, pick one up off the rack and buy it, take it home. So, Trailblazer Weekly live on a Wednesday afternoon here inside the CEC TV studios. A lot of great stuff on tap today. We're introducing in just a few minutes kind of a mini segment. It won't be the entire segment, but a mini segment. We're going to call that our weekend observations. We've been referring to weekend observations the last couple of weeks, but today we've kind of made it into its own mini segment. A little bit later in the show, we introduce a brand new segment, Blazer Beats, which is kind of our version of Around the Horn, as we take a look around the Dixie State athletics scene and what's going on in some of those sports that maybe we don't or haven't spent a lot of time on in that particular show. So a new mini segment, a brand new segment, a 90-minute show. Drayson, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Coach Paul Peterson will be joining us in just about 15 minutes. Can't wait to talk to him. Coming off two big victories against Fort Lewis, and then, of course, last week the shutout against New Mexico Highlands. Going to be good to see kind of his thoughts on the first three games of the season. They finish up their final road game at South Dakota Mines this weekend, and then back home, 5 of the next 7 at home. It'll be fun to talk to him, get his thoughts on the season so far.
Well, we're excited to have him on. In fact, I think he's excited too. He texted me last week and said, "Hey, you ever going to have me on the show again?" I said, "Absolutely. How about next week?" And he said, "Let's do it." So he'll join us here in just a few minutes. But let's jump right into our weekend observations. That's what's coming up on the show. Let's jump into our weekend observations now. This is something that we've kind of molded into, kind of like the best thing that Drayson and I observed over the weekend. And so we'll start with mine. And I'm going to start on the football field. Surprise, surprise, right? Big shutout over the weekend. Run game got going, almost 300 yards rushing for the Trailblazers in that football game. The defense scored 2 touchdowns. The special teams scored a touchdown. All these great things, but that is not my weekend observation. My weekend observation has to do with special teams. Special teams blocked a punt and got into the end zone, so there's that. Anytime you can score in all 3 facets of the game, you're doing something right. But special teams, Drayson, kickers are people too. You understand me? We had a kicker nominated for RMAC Player of the Week that I felt like, if I had a vote, that's where it would have gone. James Baird, 3 for 3 on the year on field goals. On Saturday, makes both of his field goal attempts. He goes 7 for 7 on PAT attempts. And I know some of you out there are probably saying, well, that's his job. He has one job, and it's to kick it through the uprights. Well, guess what? I've tried to do it before, and not even in a game situation. I couldn't even make an extra point. So James Baird tearing it up this year, and that was the talk coming into this year. Coach Peterson told us that, hey, you get inside 40, 35 yards, and he's automatic. He played for Coach Peterson at Snow College, and so we knew what we were getting with this guy when we came into the season, but I just felt like he deserved some recognition. He scored 13 points just himself on Saturday and leads this Dixie State team in scoring with 19 points on the season. But my vote would have been for James Baird to be the RMAC Special Teams Player of the Week. Instead, it went to the Western Colorado kicker. He did make the game-winning field goal against Colorado Mesa. However, he did miss an extra point that required him to come back and to pretty much have to make that field goal later as well. So my vote would have been for James Baird. Sticking with the special teams on my weekend observation, Keaton Mott. What a stud. Playing quarterback, splitting time with Cody Wilstead right now, but he's got the do-whatever-it-takes mentality right now. He's top 3 in the RMAC in punting. In fact, through the first 2 weeks, he led the RMAC in punting. All 3 games, he's averaged over 40 yards. He's bombed 2 of them more than 50 yards, and he's placed 3 punts inside the 20-yard line. Drayson, kickers are people too, and that is my weekend observation.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know, maybe I'm not a little glad. You must have read my notes for coming up a few minutes later. I'm going to talk a little bit about special teams as well when we jump in to talk about that game a little bit more. But my weekend observation has to do with the volleyball team. A team that is really just on a roll right now. They've won all 6 of their last 6 games after starting just 1-3 to start the season. You know, one of the things that I said coming in after that first weekend tournament was that they just didn't look quite crisp. They didn't look very sharp. They didn't look like they were communicating very well. It seemed to me that they had just been maybe just a little bit rusty throughout the summer, and that's, of course, to be expected, especially when you bring in a lot of good teams like they did there at that Desert Garden Inn Classic to start the season. But since that 1-3 start, wins over Texas Permian Basin, Southwest Oklahoma State, Pittsburgh State, Lubbock Christian, Black Hill State, and South Dakota Mines, last 2 coming in the RMAC last weekend on Friday and Saturday. Both were 3-game sets. They swept both games, or both matches, I should say, in just 3 sets. The volleyball team just to me has looked a lot better, especially that match against Black Hill State on Friday. They just looked sharp. They were communicating well, and to me, that was been the biggest difference in their 6-game win streak. Going back, hitting percentage was maybe the biggest stat that I saw difference between the first weekend to the last 6-game winning streak. First 4 games, hitting percentage, a 181 hitting percentage in that opening tournament. Since then, they've gone to a tune of 282 hitting percentage. They've increased their hitting percentage by over 100 points, including a 347 hitting percentage against South Dakota Mines last Saturday. And that's taking total kills minus errors against over total attempts to calculate that statistic, as we like to call it. In hitting percentage. So really that's been the biggest difference to me. Their passing has looked a lot better. I feel like they've just been communicating a lot more, both when they're setting, when they're trying to spike it, when they're trying to score, when they're playing defense as well. They just looked a lot crisper. Credit to Robin Feller to get this team really ready to go into RMAC play. 2-0 as they head into this weekend.
Great weekend observation there. And I should say one of the keys to that run, Toa Faleo. Did not play the first weekend. She has been on fire the last couple of weekends, and really, and not only does it help to have her up there, slamming the ball down over the net, but when she plays, then you get Lauren Gamble back in the right rotation. She doesn't have to rotate through and serve. She can focus on blocking, and the team is just that much better with Toa Faleo in there. Great weekend observation. We're going to do that each and every week. And if you ever want to chime in on Facebook, on the Twitter machine, tell us what your weekend observations in it are as well. And perhaps we'll get some of those out on the air as well. And the remaining time that we have here in this first segment is just a couple of minutes. Quick breakdown, Drayson, on football. We've talked about it, you and I. We've read the recaps. We've hashed it off air. So let's knock this thing out in a couple of minutes on air here. 55-0. We've been waiting for that scoring explosion, and it's gotten more and more and more each week. This team is definitely on an ascent, which is, you always want to be getting better. You don't ever want to plateau, and this football team certainly is ascending right now. 55-0. First shutout, I should say, in the NCAA Division II era.
Yeah, and it was really just a dominant performance, and really I want to give my hats off to the defense. I mean, they played just out of their mind. Only limited the other team to just over 100 yards of total offense. I mean, it really was just an overall domination. They won the turnover battle, got 4 interceptions, including 2 returned for a touchdown. Aaron Simpson, 60-yard return, and then Augustus Frazier there towards the end, a 32-yard interception return. They had a blocked punt return for a touchdown. First time that's ever happened in the history of their NCAA Division II era that they returned a blocked punt for a field goal. You mentioned James Baird was terrific, 2 field goals, 7 for 7 on PATs, and then obviously the special teams and then this defense were just tremendous. In fact, they combined, if you count the field goals, the extra points, and the defensive points scored, of the 55 points that the Trailblazers scored in that game, 31 of them came from defense or special teams, as we're getting a look at just some of the tremendous defense they played against the Cowboys there down in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Really just one of those situations where you just went in there and you played your best game, in my opinion. In fact, let's make this, I've told you we're going to tease this, let's make this our Rock Canyon Bank by the numbers feature. Keaton Mott has been absolutely tremendous for this team, and maybe not the way you would have expected coming into the year. 18 punts, averaging just under 43 yards per punt. You mentioned he's third in the RMAC. Do you know where he is nationally as far as punters go?
Oh, he was top 20 a couple of weeks ago. I haven't looked at it this last week, I'll be honest with you. So I'm going to say still in the top 20?
He's 15th right now
15th.
in the nation for punters. It's so fun to watch, to look at that stat, because you scroll through, they're either kickers or punters as their position that's listed on the site. He's the only quarterback, and not surprisingly, listed among those leaders in that category. He's a half a point behind being in the top 10, or half a yard before being in the top 10, and 1.3 yards before he reaches the top 5. So a little extra legs in those punts could put a quarterback in the top 5 in punting for the nation. And then James Baird, of course, leads the nation as well, because he hasn't missed a field goal at this point. And then obviously the special teams were just tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. Special teams go right along with. You must have looked at my notes, and that's what you said earlier too. But it's been fun, and it's kudos to this Dixie State coaching staff and to these players. It's a team first mentality. It's a I will do whatever you need me to do mentality. And Keaton Mott, and honestly, you and I don't want to say that I'm surprised, but I just didn't see him. He did not punt much through fall camp. But, Coach Peterson, special teams coach Mike Fossa, these guys saw him kick, so they knew. He punted a little bit at Northern Colorado. I'm sure he punted in high school. And it's not unheard of to have a position player, other than a punter, punt the football. Robert Metz, a Dixie State linebacker. He played from 2013 to 2012 to 2016. He punted 3 years here and was a great punter and averaged over 40 yards a punt as well. So great to see this Dixie State football team. You hit the nail on the head with your comments. Defense leading to offense, and the run game got going. That was big for me. I loved seeing Sept Luongo break 2 long runs, one of them for a touchdown. Darwin Natoa rushed for a touchdown. Andrew Canelli-Robles rushed for a touchdown. Good to see him get touches. Heck, it was great to see Cody Wilstead do damage in the run-pass option, those RPOs. And they worked to perfection. He ran for 72 yards. He was the second leading rusher for Dixie State in that game. As I mentioned earlier, anytime you can score in all 3 facets of the game, you're doing something right. And what I love most about this team right now is that there is a clear ascent. You're getting better every week in almost every facet of the game. Now, Coach Peterson would be the first to say, look, we've still got some things to work on. Trailblazers threw a couple interceptions, fumbled the football in the red zone the one time. So there's still some things to work on. But this football team is on the rise, getting better, and they're going to try to be road warriors and finish off this 3-game road swing with a win in Rapid City. We'll break that game down here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, team's playing really well right now. Hopefully you'd love to see if they can go get a win against South Dakota Mines and win this 3-game road trip. And then, like I said, after that, you got 5 of your next 7 at home. Could do some serious damage in this Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference.
Before we run to break, and speaking of that, one of those Sept Luongo touchdown runs, it's time for our Honolulu Grill highlights of the week. As of course you take from that title. It's brought to you by Honolulu Grill, our great friends just down the street from where we are right now. We start on the football field. Sept Luongo did not have a rushing touchdown going into this game at New Mexico Highlands. He does now. Bouncing off 4 different defenders on his way to the end zone. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. Touchdown, Sept Luongo.
Yeah, really good run by Sept Luongo. Now we're seeing the second highlight of the week as Moises Medina scored not 1, not 2, but 3 goals in their win last Sunday. And this is really just a tremendous performance by Moises Medina. We thought he might have been trying to go for 4 or 5 or even more. Of course, the Trailblazers won that game 5-2, that match, I guess I should say. But really a tremendous job by Moises Medina. I was in the booth with Steve Johnson, and he said that he didn't know if this was ever the first ever hat trick by a soccer player as far as men's golf goes. So I'm sure you probably know whether it was.
Yeah, it ended up being, I think, the third after they got in there and they looked at it a little
trick.
closer. It happened a couple other times, and Moises, great performance, and it was just and we'll talk about this a little bit later. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but speaking of offensive explosion and good to see a team get going, it was good for Johnny Broadhead and that men's soccer team to put the ball in the back of the net 5 times on Sunday. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. We got to take our first break. When we come back, Dixie State football head coach Paul Peterson joins us to break down the last couple of wins on the road and looking ahead to South Dakota Mines. Can the Trailblazers finish up this 3-game road swing and get wins in all 3 locations? We'll talk to Coach Peterson and ask him what it's going to take to fight the fatigue and earn a win on Saturday in Rapid City, South Dakota. Back after this with more Trailblazer Weekly.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this. I need a one dance. And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
For over a century, Dixie State University has been shaping the Trailblazers of tomorrow by providing a culture of active learning, active life. With a paradigm of real-world experience mixed with cutting-edge technologies and rich traditions, we provide one of the most affordable educations in the West, set against the most stunning backdrop on the planet.
Hey guys, how are you today?
Good.
I'm here to talk about how with technology you can make amazing worlds. Come with me. My team and I bring the Halo world to life.
Is that you?
That is me. I wasn't a math genius and I knew nothing about coding. But you guys do. You guys have the power to change things.
I want your job.
I want you to have my job.
There is a place where the sun doesn't hide in the winter, where the greens stay green and the crimson canyons still glow. There is a place where dimples determine destiny, and a tiny wooden tee holds the outcome in the balance. There is a place where we drive for show, putt for dough, and settle the score with another round. There is a place.
Today's show is brought to you by the Dixie State Campus Store, the official source for DSU Trailblazer clothing, providing students with textbooks, as well as educational, office, and art supplies. Located on the 2nd floor of the Gardner Center, the Dixie State Campus Store, proud sponsor of Trailblazer Weekly.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly as we continue on a Wednesday afternoon live here on CEC TV, Radio Dixie 91.3 FM, as well as the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page, as we are now being joined by the football head coach Paul Peterson, fresh off a 55-0 victory over New Mexico Highlands University, the first Dixie State shutout in the NCAA Division II era. So congratulations on that, Coach, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here. I want to give a shout out to Aaron too. You know, last time I liked you guys' polos, and
there you go.
Go pick
it
one
looks
up.
nice.
Go. Bookstore. It's in the bookstore.
Go pick one up for yourself. Good stuff. Good stuff. We love everything Aaron does over there at the campus store. Coach, let's just jump right into it. It's been a couple weeks since we've talked to you, obviously since before the season. A couple of wins back-to-back, Fort Lewis 2 weekends ago, and then last weekend, of course, the 55-0 shutout against the Cowboys. Just talk a little bit about what's clicked for you over the last 2 weekends, and obviously you've scored a lot of points last week, and your defense has played really well. What has clicked for you over the last 2 weeks?
You know, it's been fun to see the progress of our student athletes from the first game where we had that challenge with Pueblo. It was good to see where we were, what we needed to fix, what our strengths were, and fix some of those weaknesses. And I thought our guys really battled these last couple weeks, especially with these road trips. To come back 14-0 at halftime at Fort Lewis and to have the success that the guys did in that game, when a really challenging game. Defense really played well again. And to get those touchdowns late in that game, to get that game was pretty awesome. So that gave us a little bit of confidence, a little bit of momentum. Guys who came back and were ready to work for New Mexico Highlands, and long bus ride, long trip, but our guys went there and got it done in a homecoming environment for them. But like you guys mentioned before, really 3 phases played very, very well. Our passing game struggled a little bit, which we need to emphasize and fix. But I thought overall our guys continued to make this upward progression and focus on the details and come ready to work every week. And so if we just continue to do that, we'll keep getting better and better, and that's the goal.
Let's talk a little bit about your defense and your special teams.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really been, at least last week, was the big standout for me, and I talked about it a little bit ago in our first segment. 31 of the points that you scored in that game was scored by either your defense or James Baird, the field goal kicker, extra point.
It's huge.
Talk about how big your defense was, and then, of course, James Baird just being money on field goals and extra points.
He was money. So you look at those points, whenever you get a turnover, that sparks you, right? So you get this momentum, the whole team feels it, right? So when you get a touchdown off of one of those turnovers, I mean, it takes a huge burden off. You're kind of feeling this pressure of our offense. We're still not clicking on full cylinders, in my opinion. So that takes a little pressure off us, and guys are able to relax a little bit and go have some fun out there with those pick sixes and that special teams touchdown. And so that's always good. Another stat. I think they were 6 of 30. They were 18% completion percentage last week. That's not very good. You're shooting for around 60% to be feeling pretty good about yourself, and to do that for our defense and our defensive backs and our whole defense really getting pressure on the quarterback, that's huge. And then on the third down conversions, I think they were less than 20% or they were 20% third down conversion, and so they're getting off the field and giving us the ball back, and so that's exactly what we want. Special teams wise, James he's good. We've gone for it a little bit far out. That Fort Lewis, we had those 4th and shorts, and we were on the other side of the 50. There was maybe a couple times you could have taken a little bit longer field goal for him, but he's money, man. That's good. And I guess in the past they haven't had that those points in the past, but he's good.
Not had those points in the past at all. And
good kicker.
It's just been nice to know a little bit of security, not only for PATs. I mean, that's obviously a given, but just field goals, knowing that if you get inside the 20 or 30, it's points no matter what.
That's huge. Yeah, we want touchdowns. I tell them that. I don't want them out there, but if we need them.
But if we need to send you out there, we want. We're chatting with Dixie State football head coach Paul Peterson, and it's been a couple of years since they've had a reliable kicker. There's been a few through the years, but the last couple of years they've really been missing that, and a lot more 4th down attempts probably than we'll see this year. But speaking of those, and one thing that's James kept 2 field goals early, and then after that, third down conversions were getting better. You talked about the defense getting off the field on third down. Well, the offense was converting on third down as well. You go 7 of 16 on third down. Maybe like to see a few more of those, but it seems like that's something that's been getting a little bit better, and probably that you've been emphasizing as well. Hey, we got to extend drives. We can't go 3 and out and be off the field in under a minute.
Exactly. There's one thing that we need to work on offensively, and I think the first couple games, our first 2 or 3 possessions, we haven't had a first down. So that's frustrating. We need to start faster and get that momentum going. So that's something that we've emphasized. But yeah, we definitely want to click. Our third downs are great. You want to be over 40%, 50%. You're feeling really good about yourself. The game before, like I said, we got into manageable down and distances. You want to stay on schedule. If they get a negative play for us, that's when we start struggling offensively. Any offense is going to struggle with longer down and distances, obviously. So we put it on 3rd and medium down and distances or 3rd and short, and that's a benefit for us. It puts pressure on the defense, and when we can continue to stay on the field and get that play, we're sparked. We can go with our tempo, and that's huge.
You talked about needing to start faster. Up until this game, didn't have a single first half point. To your credit, you go out, you score 20 in the first half against Mexico Highlands. You had a chance, you were driving, could have been a little bit more, but hey, that's water under the bridge now. But you scored 20 first half points. You go on to halftime break with a lead this time. Certainly a better start on Saturday.
Right. And they say that 20-point lead, but I felt like we left some plays out on the field where you
I didn't want to harp on it, but you're the coach, you can.
Well, you look at that game and it's 55-0, and I look at some things where we fumble on first and goal on the 5, and where they get it, and Cody throws a couple interceptions that were timely. They're in the end zone or right before the end zone, and so you leave some points out there, and especially for us offensively, where you know, I don't want to say we're the weakness on the team, but we're not performing to the potential we need to be able to win some of these games here in the future. And so that's something that we want to emphasize. But some really good things in the run game, and there's some really good things in the pass game too. But that's something that we definitely want to fix. So keep working.
Talk a little bit about the run game, Coach, as we continue with head coach Paul Peterson here of the football team. 59 yards against Pueblo to open the season, 69 2 weekends ago against Fort Lewis, and then you break out last week against the Cowboys for 269 yards on the ground.
Right.
Did something click, or was it just something you did differently? Because, I mean, a little bit of your offensive struggles has been due to kind of the run game not being up to what you've hoped it would be. Is there something that you did differently last week, or what kind of helped you get that number?
You know, ideally, offensively, you want to stay balanced the best you can, right? So if the run game is not working like you want to, you have to focus on the pass game. And so you get into some situations where you don't have some high percentage throws, and now you're off the field, like I said. So run game always helps you out a bunch. This game, you know, and it's funny too, you look at the Fort Lewis film and we're a missed block away here, or, you know, we're an arm tackle away for maybe getting another big gainer in the run game. And so we're close, but I think this week we got onto the second level very well. We got to the linebackers, we got them covered up. And our guys are just getting better too. We don't have a lot of guys up front with a lot of playing time, to be honest. And so with each game, with each experience, having a new offense, different from what they did last year a little bit, and we're starting to click. And I think it's fun to see. Definitely in the run game, it helps out.
And I was going to ask you about that, about the offensive line, because a lot of people think, and obviously rightly so, that the run game is tied very closely to how the offensive line performs and how they're able to open holes and maintain their blocks. And for a young offensive line that hasn't, like you said, have a lot of playing time, how has that group kind of been able to come together, become more cohesive, more chemistry, being able to open up lanes for those running backs?
They're awesome. You got to have a tough man mentality to be that guy that's going to go hit someone every snap. You know, that's not an easy job on both sides of the ball. That's where we have our successes with them. And they're a tough group. You know, we're playing a lot of guys up front too, and some guys are getting banged up, and it's the next man up mentality, and guys are stepping up, whether they're however old they are, how much experience they have. And Coach Hughes, I tip my hat to him. He's doing a really good job with those guys. But yeah, I expect our offensive line to continue to improve as we go out throughout the season.
Dixie State football head coach Paul Peterson as the Trailblazers get ready to head to Rapid City, South Dakota this weekend. Little planes, trains, and automobiles type trip to get out to Rapid City. Coach, your guys have been road warriors. I know that's something, on these shows, the media, it's stuff that, we like to make out more than probably you portray at practice or to your team. It's just next game up, wherever we play, let's go play. But third game in a row, and as I look through it, this Dixie State football program, as a D2 member, had only had a 3-game road trip or more just in 2 other years. And one was that first year of Division II when you're independent and trying to scramble a schedule together. Obviously not ideal, but you make the most of it. Road warriors. What do you do with the guys to help? Because certainly by now, there's no sugarcoating it. There's got to be a little fatigue, after 2 weekends on the road, and now you got to do it again in the longest trip of the 3. What do you do to battle some of that road fatigue as you get to head out to Rapid City this weekend?
You address it. It's like playing these other teams. They were higher elevation, and it's like it's no big deal. Like you take a deep breath and you go, right? It's like what are you going to do? You're not going to let that affect the way you play. But yeah, we're a little bit tired. It's starting to catch up with us. We got back 5 in the morning for our last game, and so guys are feeling it, and that affects our studies a little bit. So we got to reemphasize that and make sure they're doing what they need to academically. And so to have 3 games, we're going to drive to Vegas, fly to Denver 6 hours to Rapid City, but we eat those. We love those trips, man. So we're excited to go play these guys, and that's not going to affect the outcome of the game. We're not going to let it. We're going to be mentally strong road warriors.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about South Dakota Mines. The Hard Rockers, a team that, up until this last year had an All-American quarterback that was running and throwing all over the place. They're breaking in a new quarterback this year. They also had a 1,000-yard rusher last year that they're trying to replace, but still a team that is capable of putting 30-plus points on you at any given time. What do you see? What jumps out at you, when you take the initial look at the scout and at the film on South Dakota Mines?
Still early in the season. They're looking to click probably a little bit better. They've had some points defensively where they've gotten some like we did last week, and so think they had a scoop score and an interception return for a touchdown last week. They're probably still trying to find their identity with their quarterback. I think they play a few of them. And get clicking in their offensive too. But they've got, like you said, they've got the ability to score a lot of points in bunches, and so our defense is up to the task. And defensively they're going to play a bend don't break. They're going to keep everything front, force you to drive the football, and try not to put their guys in bad situations. And so we got to be patient with the ball and take what they give them.
Of course. Sorry, Jason, one thing real quick. Of course, that tape last week that you get to see not only your opponent this week, but then your opponent in a couple of weeks in Simon Fraser. So, I mean, you're not breaking down Simon Fraser yet, but
we'll watch him. Yeah.
Kill two birds with one stone.
That usually happens as the season gets going. You just keep seeing the same team over and over. Whoever's finding them, whoever played them last. Yeah. But it's good to see where we're at and see how we're progressing. And there's some good teams in this conference, so it'll be a fun season.
And at least Simon Fraser is coming here instead of having to go north of the border. So
bus to Canada, that'd be sweet.
And talking about South Dakota Mines, you mentioned defense that's kind of got a bend don't break mentality. I mean, historically not been great on that side of the ball. Last year allowed over 535 yards per game. This season not tremendously better. They're still averaging 433 yards allowed defensively per game. Mm-hmm. You got to feel pretty good against this offense coming off a huge performance last week, especially in the run game, coming up against a defense that may be struggling a little bit early on in the season. Got to feel pretty good about your offense going against a defense that historically has allowed a lot of rushing yards.
Yeah, you just kind of see what fits, right? And so we got to make sure we get a good look early in what they want to do defensively, and they've shown what they do in film. We'll just see what they want to emphasize and what they want to take away, and it's just our guys doing their job. I mean, that's really the bottom line. And each week as we go, it's about us getting better and how we fit against them. It's not about them, it's about us. And so that's our mentality coming into this game. We don't look at what they've traditionally given up in the air or on the ground. It's let's fix the mistakes that we made previously and let's keep building.
And then the other aspect of that, obviously, is just your quarterback play, which, you obviously have been splitting time a little bit between Cody Wilstead, Keaton Mott, who's kind of doing double duty. We mentioned earlier for special teams. What have you seen kind of out of your quarterbacks? What do they need to improve? I mean, you really haven't solidified a number one guy. Yeah. Both have played well at times. Mm-hmm. Both have struggled at times in certain situations. What have you learned about your quarterbacks, and what can we expect for them going forward?
I think that's why they're both still playing, because of that. What you said, there's flashes of really good, and then there's some inconsistencies, and so we just got to make sure that we're focusing on making things right, making good decisions with the football. Punting's okay, but forcing an interception is not a good play, and usually there's an answer on each play, and we want to make sure our puzzle piece fits their puzzle piece. Each defense is going to have some sort of weakness that we want to attack in our pass game, and so that our quarterback needs to identify that. We're getting better. Every game you play, a quarterback's going to have a pick where it's like, it's not your fault. It's a good ball, just tipped here. Or, the defense made a good play. They've got good players too, and so just as long as we're not making those same mistakes twice, and we're putting the ball where it needs to, we're going to be okay.
Dixie State football head coach Paul Peterson live on Trailblazer Weekly here on CEC TV, Radio Dixie 91.3 FM, and the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page. Coach Drayson alluded to this earlier a little bit when he talked about the Fort Lewis game and the New Mexico Highlands game. It seemed like something clicked at halftime during that Fort Lewis game to where a different team came out onto the field. What were some of those lessons that you learned through week one and then that first half of Fort Lewis that has really helped this team over that second half of football there and then the 4 quarters in New Mexico last week?
The first game, it's always a challenge to see where you're at. I didn't realize, Pueblo was a really good team. Holy smokes, they've got some guys on their side of the ball that were really good physically. They were older. They've been in their program 4 or 5 years, and that's the goal, player development. And so that was kind of a slap in my face, and not being as prepared as I should have with that team. And so we pull our bootstraps up and we go back to work, and like I said in the Fort Lewis game, we were close. We were close on some things, but we just weren't. It just wasn't firing. It wasn't clicking. In that second half, we made some big plays in the pass game, and our guys kind of got off a little bit, which was great. And we still struggled a little bit in the run game, but we're still going to keep doing that. That's something that we're going to focus on and emphasize, because if you don't have that and become one-dimensional, it just doesn't work. And we want to put pressure on those defenses. And so, as a team, I think our defense has been playing really, really strong. They're very, very disruptive in the run game, and they want to force the team to pass. And when they're doing that, we're making plays in the pass game with interceptions and PBUs, and it's fun to watch. And so they're definitely something that we want to ride with right now. That our strength as we keep clicking offensively and keep improving. It's going to be as we go. It's going to be fun.
Dixie State head football coach Paul Peterson wrapping up his segment here with us on Trailblazer Weekly today. The Trailblazers just Friday morning we're making the trip out to Rapid City, South Dakota. Is there going to be time to go see Mount Rushmore? I mean, is
we
that
are.
Gonna
Actually,
be,
it's in the itinerary.
Is it in the itinerary? I know. I mean, it's an early flight, so you're probably to Rapid City early afternoon sometime, maybe Friday. Swing by and stop by.
We don't.
Or maybe Saturday morning with the long day before the game.
Night. Yeah, Saturday morning. They kick us out of the hotel about noon, so we'll go grab a lunch and bag lunch and see how cool that looks.
There you go.
Garrick and I have a long-standing, of course, the whole crew here at CEC have a long-standing inside joke about Mount Rushmore. We were talking about a team that was traveling there and went to Mount Rushmore, and Garrick couldn't remember the name of Mount Rushmore as they went there.
Nice
So
job, dude.
kind of
It's
a
not
long.
like it's a big national monument or anything.
It's one of my wife's favorite road trips growing
Here's
up.
the picture right here that we're referring to. Yeah. So they.
How did they have that? Did you plan this?
I didn't.
How did they have that?
I don't know how they had that
so readily.
I swear I did not plan this, but I mean, if they probably just have it on tap back there for whenever it comes up, because obviously we talk about it quite a bit.
I'd be embarrassed if I was you. I really would.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that, Coach. But he's head football coach Paul Peterson, the Trailblazers heading to Rapid City, South Dakota. I'll be on that trip as well. You can listen to that right here on Radio Dixie 91.3 FM. I'll have the call for you. For all you football fans back here into St. George, Utah, and around, you can listen to it online as well, RadioDixie913.com. Coach, best of luck to you.
Thanks.
Hopefully coming back with a win, 3-1, and then 5 of the last 7 at home,
yes,
right?
Thank you. We'll be good, man. Our guys are hustling. We're working hard. That's all you can ask.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, Drayson and I will dive into that South Dakota Mayans game a little bit further as Trailblazer Weekly marches on a Wednesday afternoon.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
Today's show is brought to you by Rock Canyon Bank, serving Utah businesses and agriculture for over 25 years, with locations in Pleasant Grove, Orem, Provo, Spanish Fork, Fillmore, and at 94 East Tabernacle, right here in St. George. Rock Canyon Bank, back to banking. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Welcome back inside Studio A, inside the Jennings Communication Building. Trailblazer Weekly marches on this Wednesday afternoon. Carrick Sagmiller, Drayson Ball with you. And Drayson, I know you've got to be happy this last week. Since our last show, your Atlanta Braves clinched the division.
Yeah, it was fun, exciting. Back-to-back years. Fun fact about that, and if I go on my soapbox here for just 20 seconds.
Go ahead, 20 seconds, and go.
Not one single beat writer in the MLB chose the Braves to win their division, nor to finish with a wild card spot. And so they proved everyone wrong back-to-back years after surprising last year, and then coming into this season completely underwhelmed, and I couldn't believe it.
Could that be similar to the football coaches in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference? Dixie State did get a single first-place vote, picked to finish 5th behind Colorado Mesa and Chadron State.
And a lot of shakeup.
And I forgot to ask Coach about
a lot of teams that were voted on. I guess obviously it's a preseason poll. It's just based on kind of last year's results or whatever. But a lot of teams that were ranked below the Trailblazers and beating teams above the Trailblazers, and just a lot of different shakeup there.
Well, I'll tell you, as you look at the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference and the RMAC in football this year, there's some shakeup. There's some this team we're getting ready to talk about even more. We just talked about South Dakota Mayans with Coach Peterson a little bit. We're going to break it down in this segment. Dixie State's game on Saturday, and they're really missing Jake Sullivan and Connor Severia. their quarterback was an All-American, and then Silveria was a 1,000-yard rusher, and we'll get into that. But they're missing those guys. How about Western Colorado? They're 2-0 in conference play. They gave Idaho State, an FCS member, a pretty competitive game, lost by a couple of scores up in Pocatello, but they come back and they've beat Chadron State, and they've beat South
Dakota Mines.
South Dakota Mines, thank you.
And Mesa.
South Dakota Mines and Colorado Mesa. Yep. I'm getting my wires mixed. Thank you. South Dakota Mines and Colorado Mesa on the road in Grand Junction last week. So they're looking a lot better. Colorado School of Mines is really good. They took CSU Pueblo out behind the woodshed last week, 34-14 in Pueblo. So there's some shakeup in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, and I know it's early to start talking about the conference race, and but that shakeup happening right there provides a way for Dixie State to get some things done and to possibly still compete for a piece of that RMAC championship.
Yeah, I mean, if you continue on your trajectory right now, obviously, you're going to put yourself in a good position to, at the end of the season, if you can, win out, essentially. I mean, obviously, that's a long ways away, but if you can put yourself in a position to face Colorado School of Mines towards the end of this season, you could put yourself in a position where you could at least tie for a conference championship. Obviously, that's a long ways down the road. A lot of things would have to happen for that to happen, but it's a certain situation where with this Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, you don't really know week to week what might happen. So there's always a chance of something crazy like that happening, and we know what they did last year against Mesa, or against Colorado School of Mines as well. So.
And if there's one team that remembers that even better than Dixie State, it's Colorado School of Mines. So when that game takes place in mid-November, the Ore Diggers will be ready, but so will Dixie State. And hopefully it can be the matchup that it can be. But as the old coach speak saying goes, one game at a time. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, and let's talk about this game this weekend. Dixie State, in order to even have that be a possibility, you got to go to South Dakota Mines on Saturday. You got to get a win to try to improve to 3-1, which I think would be a great accomplishment to win all three of these games in a row. I don't care who you're playing in this 3-game road swing. The Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, the travel schedule is difficult. The travel schedule was always going to be difficult for Dixie State football as a member of NCAA Division II. It didn't matter what conference you're in, whether it's the GNAC or the RMAC. You're either busing up to Arcata, California, 20 hours to play Humboldt State, or you're busing 15 hours to Rapid City, South Dakota to take on South Dakota Mines. So that the road schedule was always going to be hard, but it's a thing, and Coach said, and I knew he would respond like that it is what it is. We go, we play, we do our thing. But, it is a thing. You play 3 road games in a row, you're going to be a little bit tired. And, you've been eating road food for 3 weekends in a row. You haven't been sleeping in your own bed. But they've got to gear down and go and get this win. It's a winnable game. South Dakota Mines, though, is an offense that even without Jake Sullivan and Connor Severia, they can put 30-plus points on you and hurry.
Yeah, and I think I liked what Coach Paul Peterson said last segment, that they're kind of still trying to click as an offense as well after losing those 2 key pieces offensively. I think they're still trying to figure out who they are as an offense. Obviously, quarterback Spencer Zur has kind of been their main guy so far through the first couple of games, and he's obviously a first-year starting quarterback, just trying to get his feet wet and kind of learn the system and learn what he needs to do to become a productive college quarterback. And I think that's really where the Trailblazers need to exploit. We've obviously seen their defense has played very, very well. Even back to the Pueblo game, I thought their defensive line played extremely well against a really good offensive line against Pueblo. We obviously saw what they did last week against New Mexico Highlands and the defensive prowess that they showed in that game, and that's going to be the key for me, is if you can stop their offense. We know historically what they've done defensively, and even this season through 3 games, their defense is allowing 27 points per game, which may not seem like a lot, but they're only scoring to this point in the season 20 points per game offensively. So they're allowing more defensive points than they're scoring offensively. 433 yards per game allowed by that defense. And so obviously I think it's a situation where if your defense can continue to play well, like we've seen them in the last couple of weeks, and then your offense can continue to do what it did last week at spurts and at times, and then going back to Fort Lewis, continue to do that sort of trend, you're going to have a situation where, like you said, a winnable team, even though it's on the road, which playing on the road is tough no matter who you play. And so that's kind of what I expect going into this weekend.
Well, momentum is a funny thing. It's an interesting thing. 2 years ago, as the Trailblazers were getting ready to make this trip to Rapid City, South Dakota, they were coming off of a 23-22 heartbreaker at New Mexico Highlands, in which the Trailblazers gave up a 22-7 lead in the fourth quarter. Everybody on the bus on the way home, coaches, players, myself, and knew Dixie State should not have lost that football game to New Mexico Highlands. That carried over into the next week against South Dakota Mines, and you could see just a little bit of that same feel in the first quarter against South Dakota Mines that was in that fourth quarter against New Mexico Highlands. Now, they shook it off. They made it close. It was 21-7 in that second quarter against South Dakota Mines 2 years ago. And then the Hard Rockers with Jake Sullivan, with Connor Severia, were able to just run away in the second half and win it 35-14. This year, the Trailblazers are on the heels of a 55-0 shutout at New Mexico Highlands, and I fully expect that momentum to carry over. The momentum is just a funny thing that way that, I look to see Dixie State have a big first half against South Dakota Mines. I keep mentioning Jake Sullivan and Connor Severia. Why? And you hinted at this as well. Well, last year, the Hard Rockers averaged 43 points a game. Your quarterback was an All-American. He was a Harlan Hill Trophy nominee. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's the Division II equivalent to the Heisman Trophy, to the best Division II player in the country. Jake Sullivan was a Harlan Hill Trophy nominee. Connor Severia, not quite at that level, but he rushed for 1,200 yards last year and a bunch of touchdowns. And so between those two guys, because when you look at the rest of the offense, Drayson, there's a lot of receivers coming back, 3 or 4 receivers coming back from last year's team. There are a lot of offensive linemen coming back from last year's team. What's different? The guy under center or standing in the shotgun and the guy standing right next to the quarterback in the shotgun or right behind him in the I formation, whatever you want to do it. It is a thing. They've lost over 20 points per game just from losing Silveria, from losing Sullivan. It's a team that, just like Dixie State, and Coach Peterson hinted at this, they're trying to figure some things out. They're trying to figure out who they are, what is our, what's our style, what are we going to be. Right now, it's almost an exact 50-50 split between passing yards and rushing yards and passing attempts and rushing attempts. So you're going into a game on Saturday where you should have a pretty good chance to win the football game. And like you've said, the defense does what it can do and what we've seen it do the last couple of weeks and gives this offense a chance to get going. Look out. Dixie State could put some points on the board again.
A team last year that averaged 536 yards per game behind those two talented offensive players in Silveria and then, of course, Jake Sullivan. But a team this season that obviously has a different look to them as far as their battery goes. 325 yards per game is all they're managing, and I say is all they're managing. I mean, that's pretty respectable, but not quite what they were last season, not near what they were last season, if I'm speaking the truth. But there are defense that can get got, as I like to say at times. They're allowing 215 yards per game on the ground, which for a Trailblazers team who are just coming off a game in which they rushed for almost 270 yards, it could be a big day for the Trailblazers rushing game, where they have kind of struggled for the first 2 weeks of the season, but a great game last week against New Mexico Highlands, a defense that is liable to give up a lot of ground yards, and if the Trailblazers can exploit that, obviously with Luongo, Kennedy Robles, Darman Natoa, a big amount of running backs that are capable of gaining a lot of yards on this defense. I think if you can control that element of the game, and then obviously if your defense, like you mentioned, plays as well as we know that they can, and they have proven that they can play over the previous 2 games, you're going to look at a serious option of winning all 3 of these games on the road. And if they can do that, obviously, if you come back 3-1 after three road games and then your game against the Pueblo, which you lost, I think you take that to the bank every single time. If you were to simulate these 4 games over 100 times, I think you'd take 3-1 every single time.
Let's look at the series history quickly before we wrap things up in this segment between Dixie State and South Dakota Mines, because it's been a series that's been very interesting. First game, Dixie State, South Dakota Mines were not in the same conference. The only time they have not been in this series. 2014, November 1st, 2014, Dixie State was in the midst of a tough season, only won one game that season. You get into an overtime battle with South Dakota Mines, and then you miss an extra point off the upright, and you lose 41-40 in overtime. The next year, you go out to Rapid City for the first time as members of the GNAC with Blake Barney as your freshman quarterback, and he, I think, is still running from that game. He rushed for almost 300 yards himself in that game. Trailblazers won at 48-25. The next year, you saw some penalties that were huge in this game that extended South Dakota Mines drives here inside Trailblazer Stadium late in the fourth quarter. Personal foul, late hit penalties that extended Hard Rocker drives. They were able to go on and score in some of those drives, and they won 31-27 over Dixie State in 2016. 2017 was that year that we talked about earlier with kind of the rough start from the carryover from the week before at New Mexico Highlands. 35-14 winner for South Dakota Mines in Rapid City 2 years ago. And then last year, we were on the call of that game. Crazy back and forth game, a shootout, 51-47. Trailblazers win it. A game that featured a punt return, a kickoff return for a touchdown on a reverse. Both teams putting up tons of points, 51-47, and honestly, that's the kind of series it's been. It's either been close or it's been a two-score or more game.
And once again, your ability to recollect games that have happened 3, 4, 5 years ago to that extent blows my mind every single time, and I'm just thank you for being able to recollect those games in the way that you do.
Well, yeah, like the 2015 game, you don't forget a 15-hour bus ride out to somewhere, and then you don't forget a freshman quarterback running all over the place. And in the other games, I have a secret advantage, and it's the fact that I'm the Dixie State football sports information director. So I'm writing all the recaps. I'm helping compile the game notes and the information. And you know what? Maybe I should just learn to take a compliment. Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
I appreciate that. Dixie State, South Dakota Mines getting set to do battle on Saturday. It's a 6 p.m. kick. I wonder how they got that approved. Maybe we should have asked Coach Peterson that question, because the RMAC has a thing that if it's not within a certain number of hours away, you have to play an afternoon game. But this is clearly outside of that range, and you got to play at 6 p.m. instead of at noon or 1, and then travel back in the middle of the night. But 6 p.m. kickoff in Rapid City on Saturday. I'll have pregame at 5:30 on Radio Dixie 91.3 FM and Radio Dixie 913.com. Look for all the recaps, results, photos on DixieStateAthletics.com, and follow us on Twitter at Dixie Athletics for all the updates throughout the game. We got to take a break. When we come back, it's our new segment, Blazer Beats. We have that coming up right after this timeout on Trailblazer Weekly.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, the boss's boss. If 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, that means it could be you, your barber, your barber's barber.
Nice work. Thanks.
You, your plumber,
Breathe right into your foot.
your plumber's masseuse.
Yes.
You, your dog walker,
On your left.
your cat jogger. Or you, your co-pilot, your co-pilot's co-pilot. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org to know where you stand.
Today's show is brought to you by Honolulu Grill, bringing you a variety of Hawaiian and other Polynesian foods. Honolulu Grill's unique tropical taste will leave your mouth watering for more. Located at 706 700 South in St. George. Honolulu Grill. Come feast with us.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly as we march on a 90-minute episode. The first time we'll be doing a 90-minute episode, and it will be this way going forward. Trailblazer Weekly, moving to a little bit longer time. Obviously, we saw the Honolulu Grill read earlier, just a few minutes ago. Honolulu Grill, obviously, thanks to all our sponsors. Honolulu Grill Rock Canyon Bank, and then, of course, the Dixie State Campus Store, which we've mentioned earlier in the show. Just tremendous thanks to all our sponsors making this show possible, responsible for the items you see here on the set, and, just really glad to have a lot of support from the community.
Yeah, those sponsors are big time for us that have allowed us to do some different things with the show this year, and it's only going to get better and better. And we hope to be able to expand a little bit more into the community and really to be known here on campus as a source for Dixie State athletic news and analysis and breakdown. So we are certainly excited about the future of Dixie State athletics. We've got some things in the works to be able to do shows live from the campus store, from Honolulu Grill, from these places. Will they let us do a show in the lobby of Rock Canyon?
Well,
I don't know.
We might have to check and see if they'd let us do. They had their customer appreciation a few days ago. You came over to that.
Did.
It's one of those things that not a lot of these big banks do. You don't see these huge banks doing these customer appreciation days, but they had that over there. Maybe we should see if we can do one over there from the lobby or there, maybe just outside or on the front or something like that. It'd be really fun.
We just want to get out in the community, and honestly, we want to hear from you as we continue to build this. Drayson and I, it's fun to sit here and break this down. We're bantering, we're going back and forth, we're talking Dixie State athletics. We love it. We both graduated here from Dixie State, basically the same degree. You were the first media studies track.
Yeah.
I was mass communication. It would have been media studies.
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
It would have been media studies had they had that. But we are big supporters of Dixie State athletics and of this university, and love the trajectory of the university, of the athletics program, and of this show. We want to see the show continue to grow to where the community, to where everybody's involved, and we'd love to get out and know what everybody's up to. So we're going to try to get some social media interaction going here in the coming weeks, and be able to read some of your comments on the air and interact with you and do more giveaways. And so we're looking forward to that, because there's a lot going on in this community. And Drayson, there's a lot going on on this campus and in this athletic program that which was part of the reason that we actually have extended this to 90 minutes, because there's
that was a heck of a segue, by the way. I just want to give it up to you. That was a heck of a segue.
Hey, that's why they pay me the big bucks. But there's a lot going on in this athletic program, and that's why we're going 90 minutes now and possibly to 2 hours in the future, because there's so much good stuff happening that we found that in an hour, it wasn't enough to cover everything. So we're going 90 minutes now, and this is our new Blazer Beats segment, where basically we go around the campus and we let you know what's going on inside Dixie State athletics. The way this is going to work, we're going to go back and forth. I'm just going to name a sport, or Drayson will name a sport back to me, and basically we've got to say the first thing that comes to our head about that sport. What is on our minds? What have we been thinking about that sport? We're going to cover a lot of those sports here. Drayson, we are on the clock. Start the stopwatch. Let's go. Volleyball.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about volleyball in our opening segment. I'll just rehash a few of those things that we talked about. It was really fun to just watch how they've been able to get better. Obviously, we've seen a lot of senior leadership really come into play clutch. Lauren Gamble, Megan Trainer, obviously getting Toa Faleo back was key for them after that first 4 games in which they didn't perform quite as well as we had hoped or had seen from this team in the past. They've put themselves in a good position going forward as they've won their first 2 Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference matches, and obviously a team that I think is really based off of the coaching from head coach Robin Felder. She does a tremendous job. I can't say it enough. I harp on this a lot. I feel like sometimes I'm a broken record, but really, Coach Robin Felder does a tremendous job of coaching these young women into become much better throughout the course of the season. Obviously, they've looked much crisper. They've looked sharper in these last 6 games in which they've won all of them. They're on a 6-game winning streak as we speak. Obviously, they have been communicating better. I think just overall it's been a lot better. Increased their hitting percentage after the first 4 games. They were at .181 hitting percentage, and then over the 6-game winning streak, they're up to .282. Increased their hitting percentage by over 100 points, which is obviously tremendous, including .347 hitting percentage against South Dakota Mines on Saturday. So really like what I'm seeing from the volleyball team.
I'd say every once in a while there is a team that you see them, and just when you're around them, when you interact with them, when you interact with the coach, with the players, with the assistants, with those around that team, you just get a feel that something special is bubbling and is about to burst, and that's That's what I get around this volleyball team right now, that there is so much momentum. There is so much talent on this team, and they were a phenomenal team last year. I think they're going to be even better by the end of the year this year, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the season has in store.
No doubt about it. Face Western Colorado this Friday, and then Colorado Mesa, the big rivalry game. Played them 4 times last season and won 3 of those. It'll be fun to see them how they do this weekend. Let's move on. Let's move over to the pitch. Let's talk a little bit about men's soccer. Carrick, what you got for me?
Men's soccer, a team that, and if I had to give you a phrase just right off the bat, on the rise. Really, a team that's on the rise. They've played a tough preseason schedule, multiple ranked teams, and they had one of those teams, number 17, Eastern New Mexico, on the ropes here at home, and then you drop a heartbreaker in overtime on a deflected ball that goes in as an own goal. The Trailblazers have had a number of games that have gone down into overtime, and you've either tied or you have lost on a penalty kick or an own goal or whatever it may be, things that sometimes are just out of your control. The Trailblazers right now are on the rise, scoring 5 goals against MSU Denver on Sunday. Moises Medina, the hat trick. But it's not just him, though. There have been 4 other guys on this team have scored goals this season. Guli Bianchi has scored 2 of them. Matt Lockwood with a goal, Enrique Bucio with a goal, John Joseph with a goal. I feel like Coach Broadhead has this team right where it needs to be to go on a run, to make some noise in the RMAC. And you know, they had the Trailblazer Club luncheon yesterday, and a couple of the guys were there. Moises Medina was there. Zach Nielsen, the goalkeeper, were there. And they both said, you know, really, we're seniors. We want to lift that trophy at the end of the season.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. I was at that game on Sunday doing the PA for them. It was fun to watch Moises Medina. Anytime you can watch a hat trick, it's always fun. You know, once he had 2, we kept thinking, come on now, let's get another one just to get that hat trick really fun. Hopefully they can continue to do that as they move forward.
We were texting each other back and forth, actually, saying, Campus Store Player of the Week, perhaps. Honolulu Grill Highlights of the Week, perhaps, and it continued to get better and better. And Trailblazers now 2-3-1 overall, 1-1 in RMAC play. They'll get set to try to build on that this weekend. And I think it's a team that, having that offensive explosion, we talked about momentum earlier in the show, that's going to carry over. The Trailblazers are going to see the back of the net much more consistently now, and the wins are going to add up for this men's soccer team. Let's stay on the soccer pitch as we continue to go with our Blazer beats and move around the campus and the Dixie State Athletic Program. Drayson, women's soccer.
Yeah, a team that right now 2-1-2 have had a couple of draws that really haven't kind of gone their way, I guess. But you know, certainly a team that's got a winning record right now. They played Westminster on Sunday as well. A team that it really surprised me as I was watching that game as well. They were picked to finish 6th in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference preseason poll. The Trailblazers obviously picked to finish 3rd, but a Westminster team that came in and I think really surprised at least me or a lot of us that we didn't really expect that out of Westminster coming in. They played very, very tough. Trailblazers obviously got out to a 1-0 lead in that game. Whitley Johns scored that goal, assisted by Zoe Clark, but you know, they kind of came back and their defense was very, very good in that game. They did get another goal, which I'm not going to say any goal is lucky because it obviously takes skill to score a goal, and I've certainly never been able to do that in my lifetime, so shouldn't certainly say it was lucky, but it was maybe just a little more fortunate than lucky, I guess, that it was a kind of a carom. They had shot, it was off the post, it was kind of a rebound. It hit that post, and the ball came off at a weird angle, and so the goalkeeper wasn't in a great position. It was a point-blank range, kind of a score there for Westminster to tie that game, that match at 1. Obviously, Trailblazers go on to finish that one at a 1-1 draw, but certainly a team that I think has shown that they're capable of putting up a lot of goals. They scored 6 goals in a game earlier this season. I think they're on the rise, like you mentioned, and I think led by Whitley Johns, who right now is leading the team right now, at least in goals. She's scored a goal, like I mentioned, against Westminster. She had 4 shots, 3 of them shots on goals. How about Chandler Greenwood in that game match against Westminster? She had 8 saves, a career high for the Trailblazers, as she really did a very solid job there in the net for Dixie State.
Whitley John's leading the team not only in goals, but up there in assists, leading the team 2 goals, 2 assists to lead Dixie State in both categories. How's this? Last thing about women's soccer, the Trailblazers have played 5 games, 5 matches. 9 different goal scorers were the Trailblazers in those 5 matches. They're spreading the wealth. It's not all Whitley this year.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different people that can score.
Yeah, that's one of the things. If you have depth, that's always a good thing. Whenever you're playing. Let's keep it moving, Carrick. We talked a little bit about this. Obviously, we're going to have Coach Stuckey on in just a few minutes, but let's move over to women's golf. Talk a little bit about them and how they've done so far this season.
Phenomenal start for this Dixie State women's golf team, and I would say they sprinted out of the gate, winning the RMAC preview in Pueblo, Colorado, which, interestingly enough, and we'll ask Coach Stuckey about this, but not played on the course that the actual RMAC championship is going to be played on. Usually when you call it a preview, you play, you think back to the men's team hosting the Division II South Central Regional last year. They had the fall preview and then played the actual event on the ledges last year. Not the case this year, but the Trailblazers still no harm done for them. They go down to Pueblo and they get the win week 1, and then they turn around just Monday and Tuesday. They finished just yesterday, and from what I understand, the weather got a little iffy that second day. A lot of rain overnight from Monday to Tuesday. The course was just just didn't play well on Wednesday. They were in a great position going into that second day, and the course didn't play as well as they would have liked it to. Got a little windy toward the late stages of their rounds, but Coach Stuckey would be the first one to tell you no excuses. They want to finish in the top 5, but they finished at 6th. You know what? You had one of the top ranked teams in the country there at this tournament. You had the top talent from the West region, from the South Central region. I have been really impressed what I have seen from this women's golf team. The Trailblazers finished ahead of every RMAC team except for Colorado Mesa. And they're the team that Dixie State just barely beat and Pueblo the week before. So I think you're starting to see, are there rivalries in golf? I mean, is that a thing? You're starting to see a rivalry brew up in Dixie State's last year in the RMAC in this women's golf. You're going to see Dixie State and Colorado Mesa going at it all year, and it's going to, culminate with that RMAC championship in the spring. So we'll see what goes there. But I've been really impressed. Dixie State, a good combination of upperclassmen with a couple of juniors and a senior, but also a lot of freshmen and sophomores that have been contributing as well. Caitlin Diebel tied for 7th at Western New Mexico. She was 7 over, 77-74 in that. But how about Abby Porter, the freshman? She contributed, finishing in the top 10 with a 9 over, 74 in the first round and a 78 in the second round. You've got, players that are freshmen, players that are seniors, that are juniors, all over helping this team. Coach Stuckey has his teams right where it needs to be, with a home event coming up next week.
Can't forget about Madison Moss, tied for 3rd place at the RMAC Fall Preview as well. She's going to be a tremendous addition to this team as well going forward.
Speaking of home events, the men's golf team won the NCAA Division II South Central last year at the Ledges. They hosted that one, won it. That has picked up some momentum. Drayson, tell us about men's golf.
Yeah, I mean, back-to-back top 5 finishes to start the season. They finished 2nd at the SMU Invitational a couple weekends ago, and then obviously last weekend finished 5th at Western Washington Invitational. A match where a little bit maybe of a disappointing result. I mean, I don't know if you can really say that after a top 5 finish, but after the first 36 holes, after the first basically 2 rounds, they were leading that event. And obviously you can kind of say at that point maybe a little bit more of a disappointing finish to come all the way back down to 5th after leading after 36 holes. But a team that, whenever you start the season, you have back-to-back top 5 finishes. I think you take that every time. A team that I think, we've seen what they're capable of. Last season finished 9th at the Nationals after winning that South Central Regional here in St. George. So a team that certainly knows what it takes to get to that level of playing field, and certainly a team that's on the rise right now. At that SMU Invitational a couple weekends ago, Ammon Uden finished top 6. They had 3 different top 12 finishers. Brock Nilsson and then Spencer Wallace there was 12th. Brock Nilsson was obviously 10th as well. And then had 4 finishers in the top 30 last week at Western Washington Invitational. So really a team that has a lot of different players that can put up good numbers, and hopefully we see this trend of top 5 finishes or even better going forward.
And Uden, just a freshman and an international from Ferrum, England. And he was Dixie State's leader, like you said, in that St. Martin's Invitational. Brock Nilsson, Spencer Wallace looking good. Trailblazers men's golf team, they'll have 3 more events in the fall. And the one thing that you know about Coach Sutterfield and his teams, they get better as the year progresses. And these solid finishes in the fall so far bode well. And Dixie State will be looking to try to win the RMAC on the way out the door, and then try to defend their South Central Region title as well. Should mention women's tennis will be on the road at Colorado Mesa this weekend, taking on Mesa and Colorado College. Of course, the Trailblazers can't say defending their RMAC title because the RMAC does not sponsor women's tennis anymore. And then cross country at Sacramento State this weekend for a race down there. Division II schools from all over the country will be coming to Sacramento for that race because it is the national championships preview of the course. So if you want to get kind of a preview from what you're going to be running in November, and that'll be huge for someone like Billy Hatch trying to qualify for the Nationals for the 2nd straight year, which has never happened before at Dixie State, trying to qualify 2 years in a row. That is your Blazer Beats as we move around the campus and give you our thoughts on what is going on in Dixie State athletics. A fun segment. I think we're going to keep it going in future weeks. We got to take a break. We talked about the women's golf team during part of our Blazer Beats. Well, guess who's here to join us on the show? Women's golf head coach Lindsay Stuckey. We'll talk about the first couple of weeks. We'll ask her about this year's team and much, much more. Don't go anywhere. Head coach Lindsay Stuckey joins us right after this break.
Action!
Welcome back inside the CEC TV studios. Trailblazer Weekly marches on this Wednesday. And no, we are not finished. This is the first time we've done a 90-minute show, and this is the 5th segment of our first 90-minute show. We've got 30 more minutes and a lot of good stuff on tap as we bring in women's golf head coach Lindsay Stuckey joining us here inside the Janie's Communication Building on Trailblazer Weekly. Coach, just telling us during the break, you got in just a few hours ago, really, 11 p.m., get back into St. George, and here you are. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to talk with us about this year's team and the success that this team has had so far this year. So thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me. We're
looking forward to this chat. We've been trying to get you on for a couple of weeks, and this works out well because we can talk about the last few weeks, and we can also talk about this weekend or this coming week when you'll have a home tournament out at Sand Hollow. So let's jump right into it, and let's just talk about these first 2 weeks and just recap the start of the season. I couldn't think of a better way to start than to go over to Pueblo and to get the win there at the RMAC Fall Preview. And as you were telling us during the break, not the actual course you're going to be playing the RMAC Championship on, but still a good opportunity to get out and compete against the members of the conference.
Yeah, we were able to come away with the win against all the members of the conference, so we were pretty pumped.
How big is that to be able to go out and first tournament of the year to kind of already have that measuring stick? Where do we measure up early in the year against everyone else in the conference?
Yeah, I think we really kind of had a target on our back to begin with. We were voted #1 in the coaches poll. And I told the team that, we got to work. We got to show that, this is not a surprise. So it was awesome to see us come ahead. We struggled a little bit the second day. We've never really been in that position where we're leading after round 1. And we were able to pull it together and finish pretty strong.
And talk about that finish. For me, it's probably stressful for you because you're out on the course. Drayson and I are just sitting back in our offices and we're watching oh, come on, update those numbers, update those live stats. And it's a 4-stroke lead, then it's a 1-stroke lead, then it's a 3-stroke lead. Talk about maybe that roller coaster of those last few holes and then and your team holding on to get the win.
Yeah, I mean, I try my hardest not to look at that live scoring, to be honest, just because I don't want my mood to really, affect the way they play. But as you saw, it was one shot at the end. Our freshman, Abby Porter, was finishing, and she'd had a great tournament. She ended up struggling a little bit on that last hole, but, they finished pretty strong. I was proud of them. The pressure was on. I think some of them knew where they were at because they have access to that scoring as well.
Coach, when you're out there, it's always interesting for me to know, kind of what your role is as the coach there. While you're on the course during the actual match, are you kind of like, I'm going to compare it to the PGA where you have your caddy. Can you do that kind of stuff as far as going player to player? I mean, obviously you're not just following one of your players. You're probably moving around the course and different things like that. Can you kind of go up to a player on maybe a particular shot and say, hey, maybe try this, the wind's coming from here, maybe try to go after it, be aggressive? Is that kind of what you kind of do as you're moving throughout the course on the match day?
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends on the player, how much help they want. And we talk about the round after the practice round. We'll say, okay, which holes cause some troubles? What's the game plan for this particular hole? And, I'm just there to motivate them and give them kind of confidence in what their decision making is. So a lot of it, they know what they're doing out there. I'm just there to say, hey, that's the right decision. Let's go with that.
And obviously, like you said, each player is different.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, like, obviously when you're going through, I feel like it would be inappropriate to ask, like, hey, how you playing? What's your score? Do you know, obviously you said you don't really look at the live stats. Do you kind of know or have a sense of kind of where you're at maybe and say, hey, this is the last day, we're a stroke or two behind fourth or fifth or sixth place or first place or whatever. Mm-hmm. Do you kind of say, hey, maybe be a little bit aggressive, go for birdie instead of going for par, play it a little safer? Do you have that kind of knowledge in real time, or is it just kind of let's play the holes and see how we end up?
Yeah, I definitely have a few players that I can say, hey, we need a few coming in, like, let's go. And then there's some that, I just try and tread lightly and say, okay, you're doing good, keep going, stay steady. We've worked a ton on body language this year too, so I feel like my players, they stay positive. I don't know how they're playing. I can't tell unless I'm looking at the score, which I think is, the mark of a great player. You're not fazed by the last shot. You're staying in that moment.
I need to learn from that in my golf game because my emotions, Drayson and I have golfed together. My emotions certainly show out there on the course. We're chatting with women's golf head coach Lindsay Stuckey, the Trailblazers, fresh off of a win in their first tournament of the season a couple of weeks ago at CSU Pueblo. And then, Coach, you headed down to Arizona, Western New Mexico, hosting this tournament down in Arizona. I just got back last night and are trying to get back in the swing of things before hosting your own tournament here in a couple of days. Sixth place finish, but a really tough field. Sixth place out of, 18 teams there at the tournament. And, you've got some of the best from the West region, some of the best from the South Central region. So a very good field. So sixth place, really not bad. Your team played well. You mentioned that the weather had kind of wreaked some havoc on that second day.
Yeah, near the end, the wind was blowing pretty good. It did kind of cause us some trouble with yardages and stuff, but we were happy with that finish. Didn't quite meet our goal for that top 5. But, overall, there was the fourth ranked team in the country was there. It was some solid competition. So overall, a good performance by everyone. And
let's talk about some of the best performers, not just this last week, but that CSU Pueblo. You've got a good mix of a junior, a senior, and a couple of juniors, but then you've got some sophomores and some freshmen really contributing to this team. Mm-hmm. You had Madison Moss, a sophomore, was your leading scorer, if you will, at CSU Pueblo, and then Caitlin Diebel, the junior, comes back and is leading the team this last weekend. Talk about this kind of the chemistry and the build of this team of freshmen, sophomores, and how they're all contributing in their own way.
Yeah, we're a really deep team this year. We had some solid competition. We spend a lot of our practices qualifying for these tournaments, and they just push each other. It's made them get better. I'm not really sure who's going to qualify each and every week because it's so competitive. And some of them, I mean, Maddie has come back really strong. Caitlin has always been kind of solid for us. And Ashley has really surprised me coming back as a senior. She's had 2 of her, best collegiate rounds in these first 2 tournaments. So that's been really good for us.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about that final day there at the New Mexico event there you had a couple days ago, I guess I should say. Caitlin Diebel started the day tied for 36. She came into play that day tied for 36. She moves all the way up, tied for 7th to finish. She shoots 77 on day 1, 74 on day 2 to finish at a +7 overall and get herself into the top 10. What did you see from day 1 to day 2 with Caitlin Diebel to where she was able to kind of move up the leaderboard at such a high pace?
Yeah, I mean, with that wind, Caitlin's one of the longest hitters out there. She was able to take advantage of that length and really get some birdies on those par 5s where she needed it. I think her 74 was one of the lowest rounds on the day, so I knew she was going to come back strong. 77, she wasn't happy with that the first day, and she made some key putts for us to keep us, in that 6th position. So I was pretty proud of the way she finished. She's a leader for us.
Of course, can't forget to mention Abby Porter, who also moved up. She finished out. She started the day outside the top 10 at tied for 14th, moved up into the top 10, finished at tied for 9th place. She shoots a 74 on day 1 and a 78 on day 2. Talk a little bit about kind of how do you go in and change things day 1 to day 2, saying, hey, this is what we're going to expect, this is what we kind of learned from day 1. How do you make those adjustments just on the fly, or does it kind of, let's keep the same mindset, let's keep the same kind of strategy, or do you kind of change the script from day 1 to day 2?
I mean, day 1 for us was a great round. I think we shot 301, which is a pretty good round. Everybody was in the 70s, even our 5th girl. We had some depth there. We weren't going to struggle if we had to count that score. The course definitely played a lot different. The pins were tucked on day 2, and that wind was blowing. So we had to adjust on the fly for sure. But they did fairly well, so I was pleased.
Chatting with Dixie State women's golf head coach Lindsay Stuckey. The Trailblazers 2 tournaments in the books, and now this weekend, Coach, I keep saying this weekend, Monday and Tuesday. We're in the middle of the week. It's Wednesday. Monday and Tuesday this coming week, going to host the tournament, the 6th annual Dixie State Fall Invite at Sand Hollow. It's a tradition that the previous coach set up. You've kept it going. Phenomenal event there. Talk about some of the teams that are coming in and what it all takes to get this tournament up and running and everything it takes to run a tournament. From what I understand, running a tournament is pretty exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, the golf course has been really helpful. The staff there is great. It's a great facility. As you probably know, it's like ranked the top in Utah every year. We've got some really good teams, probably the strongest field we've ever had in the tournament. Cal State San Marcos, Concordia, Simon Fraser in Canada, always really good, probably top 25 teams. Also some good RMAC teams, so that'll give us another shot at those teams.
What do you look at? Does the mindset change at all? And maybe it doesn't, and that's fine if it doesn't, but does the mindset change at all when you're playing, say, here at on a home course or on a course here in St. George than when you're heading out onto the road? Obviously, you don't have all the distractions of the road and going out to eat and those things, but what is different playing at home than playing out on the road?
It'll definitely be nice to sleep in our own beds. I think that will be helpful. We're comfortable out at Sand Hollow, so we should be able to post some good scores. We play out there quite often. We practice out there. I think that is a huge advantage to know the golf course, and we know the wind can blow out there sometimes, and we're prepared.
It's hurricane. The wind's always blowing, from what I'm told. There's a few communities around here. Hurricane's one of those.
Yeah.
Hurricane, right?
Yes,
wind's
hurricane.
Always
Yeah.
But Sand Hollow, a terrific golf course. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's my favorite golf course that I've ever played. Of course, I've not played as many courses as probably you or any of your players have, but it's certainly one of my favorite courses here in Utah. Coach, we mentioned it briefly earlier. Picked to win the RMAC, first place in the preseason poll. Does that, you mentioned you kind of put the target on your back. Does that kind of, when that comes out, does that change your mindset of like, I mean, before obviously you knew you had some good players and you were going to have a good team this season. Does that kind of either validate the hard work you've put in over the previous couple seasons? Does it add extra pressure? How does that affect the team dynamic going into this season?
I think it definitely validates, what I've known for a long time. We have a ton of talent, but there's a lot of talented girls out there. It's just about who can work hard and put in the work. Obviously, I mean, I say, I can lead them to the ladder, but I can't push them up the rungs. And this team is, one that cares about winning just as much as I do. They care about getting better. They support one another. And I think, we have a great chance to win the RMAC, and that's our goal.
Certainly a team, from what I've gathered from you, that wants to see one another succeed. I mean, Caitlin Diebel has finished in the top 12 at least, top 7 last week, and then a couple weeks ago, top 12 finish or higher. She's probably been your leader, but obviously you've got, Madison Moss, who finished in the top 3 a couple weeks ago. She's certainly capable of doing that. Do you have a lot of kind of leaders on that team to where they don't really care if they're first or if they're fifth? They just want to have the best team put forward and have each individual play their best. I'm assuming that's kind of the dynamic.
Yeah, I think all of them are that way, and freshman Abby Porter has really stepped in and helped us, and she's really one that brings the team together as well. So it's a good dynamic. I think it's probably the most supportive team that I've ever had and really cares about one another's success.
How do you help influence that dynamic? Obviously, there's some nuances as being a golf coach versus, a football coach or a basketball coach, where it really is like you go out there and you perform as a team, you do everything as a team. Golf, you score as a team, you win conference championships as a team, but there's also that individual aspect where you could be the medalist at a tournament. Maybe your team didn't win or didn't finish in the top 5. How do you help that dynamic in terms of helping your players see that vision of, yes, your individual scores are important, but really it's means to an end of the team finish?
Yeah, I think for a lot of these girls, it's been they were the star on their high school team. So coming in, it is sometimes difficult to say, wow, okay, there's a lot of good players here. I'm no longer top dog, so to speak. But it has really happened organically. I think, I show them that I care, and that's really pushed them to work harder for me. They're just a really good group.
Absolutely. Coach, we appreciate you stopping by the studio today and hanging out with us. We wish you all the best. Our time has run out in this segment, but fantastic team. Awesome to see you win that first tournament and to be really competitive in that second tournament. And, hopefully can pop out there and watch some golf. If you want to go watch some great college golf on Monday and Tuesday at Sand Hollow, it'll be there all day long. So head out there to Sand Hollow and check out the 6th Annual Dixie State Fall Invite.
And we need to see if we can plan something to do with the women's golf team. Last year we had that putt off there. We went to with the men's golf team. We need to get out to the women's golf team. Maybe see if we can, Carrick and I can put up our best putting competition with some of your top girls there.
Don't worry, you don't have anything to fear, Coach. We're not any good. Although we had a couple of those men's players on the ropes in that putting competition, and then we fell apart at the end. But
we look forward.
And by the way, that's the only thing that we could ever have a chance of beating them at is putting, because anything off the tee or any sort of real golf event, we would just be completely lost. So.
Absolutely. Head coach Lindsay Stuckey, thank you so much. We've got to take our final break. When we come back, we put a bow on the show. We look back at the big topics from today's show, as we'll also take a look ahead at this weekend's schedule in Trailblazer Athletics. Stick with us. More Trailblazer Weekly right after this.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly. One final time, just a couple of minutes left to wrap this show up. Drayson, I want to give a quick shout out again to all of our sponsors, to Rock Canyon Bank, Honolulu Grill, the Dixie State Campus Store. Also, we forgot to do this earlier in the show, our Dixie State Campus Store Player of the Week, Moises Medina. You saw his hat trick in our Honolulu Grill highlights of the week, but congratulations to him. And a fantastic week at Trailblazer Athletics, and I can't wait to see what this weekend has in store.
Yeah, I mean, back to Moises Medina. I mean, obviously, a tremendous performance. Congratulations to him. The RMAC, not the RMAC Player of the Week. He should have been, but could have. The Campus Store Player of the Week, excuse me. And then obviously a lot of good weekend stuff to come up. Obviously, the football team going on their last road trip after a 3-game road swing, and then a lot of good volleyball on the road this week. Western Colorado and Colorado Mesa. Men's and women's soccer. Women's soccer will be here in Dixie State, and then men's soccer will be out on the road this weekend as well. But a lot of good stuff coming up. It was a tremendous show. I loved having head coach Paul Pearson on to get his thoughts on what we've seen so far these first 3 games of the season, and then what to expect going forward. And then Lindsay Stuckey, she was just absolutely tremendous. Really fun to talk to her to get to know a little bit more about the women's golf team.
Always good to have our coaches on the show. Looking forward to having some student athletes on the show as well. Women's soccer is at home Friday night and then Sunday. And then if you want to catch some women's swimming, getting their season started, they have an inter-squad scrimmage at the Washington City Community Center Friday night at 6 p.m. And that's your home events this weekend, a little bit of a lighter one. And then get ready because football is at home 5 out of the next 7 weekends, and a couple of those dates there's football and volleyball on the same day at home. So get ready to rock and roll with some home events. Great show today. We want to give a shout out to our CEC TV crew for all their help. Also to Sean Denovan back in the Radio Dixie 91.3 FM studio. And thank you for watching today's show. For Drayson Ball, I'm Carrick Segmiller. Go Trailblazers.